walk through history.
The story plays back in 1776.
Lanky schoolmaster Ichabod Crane courts Katrina Van Tassel, a young heiress who is also being pursued by the Dutchman Brom Bones. After being rebuffed by Katrina at a party at the Van Tassel's farm, Ichabod is chased by a headless horseman who hurls his head at the man, throwing Ichabod from his horse, and the schoolmaster vanishes. Certainly a great Halloween classic, but it might surprise you to know that the story, with all its supernatural charm, is grounded in reality. The true story of Sleepy Hollow can be traced to Washington Irving's early years. In 1798, 15-year-old Irving left his native home of New York City to flee a yellow fever outbreak and made his way north to Tarrytown, where his friend James Kirk Paulding lived. As time passed, Irving garnered a respectable reputation as a writer, but there was no real job prospects for him in America, so he left Tarrytown for Birmingham, England. His sister Sarah and her husband Henry Van Wert were already residing. It was there that Irving, plagued by writer's block, was struck with renewed inspiration to write. It seems a conversation with his brother-in-law had awakened in him old memories of his time in the Hudson Valley. As a youngster in Tarrytown, he had been introduced to local ghost stories and lore, so it makes sense that Irving would begin to write about these legends in a collection of shorts called The Sketchbook. Under the pseudonym Geoffrey Crayon, yes, Geoffrey Crayon, Irving wrote 34 essays and short stories in The Sketchbook, which became the first widely read works of American literature in Britain and Europe. In it were two giant literary short stories, Rip Van Winkle and The Legend of Sleepy Hollow. The story has many references to people and places that Irving actually encountered while growing up in Tarrytown. The village of Sleepy Hollow is in fact a real place. It was known as North Tarrytown, sitting just across the Pocatello River from Tarrytown proper. Citizens voted to rename their town as Sleepy Hollow in 1996, but Sleepy Hollow in Irving's story, and indeed the Sleepy Hollow that existed when he wrote it, wasn't a town at all. It was indeed a hollow, which usually comprises of an area much larger than any one village. In this case, you could consider Sleepy Hollow the entire Pocatello River Valley, but it would certainly have had a dirt road or a horse path and a church that sat just beyond a bridge. The original Headless Horseman Bridge was a simple wooden span that has long since rotted away and has been rebuilt and reimagined at least 5 different times, finally ending up as the concrete and steel structure one sees today. The old Dutch church and the churchyard are real too. The church, in all its old world charm, was built in 1697 and is the second oldest existing church and the 15th oldest existing building in the state of New York. Aside
At Mallard, your work consists of pushing the mill.
from the structures, there is a striking similarity to real people in Tarrytown and the characters in the story. Katerina Van Tassel's grave in the churchyard has often been associated with the inspiration for Irving's muse, Katrina. This probably isn't the case, though. Katerina was a middle-aged woman when Irving was in Tarrytown, and her personality didn't fit the part. Instead, evidence points to her niece, Eleanor Van Tassel. Now, Eleanor's timeline better aligns with Irving's youth. She was in her late 20s during his formative years. Their families were well acquainted, and it's plausible that Eleanor's vibrant personality and alluring character captured Irving's imagination and served as the inspiration for the enchanting Katrina. In the creation of the character Brom Van Brunt, also known as Brom Bones, Irving drew inspiration from 2 men, both blacksmiths named Brom. The first, and most notable, was Abram Brom Martling, a heroic war veteran who played a crucial role in organizing Tarrytown's defenses during the Revolution. His most daring adventure involved leading a group of followers on a secret mission to burn down a Tory leader's house in retaliation for the burning of the Van Tassel residence in 1777. Their successful return to the Patriot lines turned them into instant heroes. The second Brom was Abram Van Alstyne. This Brom played a prank on schoolmaster Jesse Merwin, tricking him to propose to his long-suffering fiancée, Jane Van Dyke. Merwin, who lacked confidence and was hesitant to pop the question, found himself pursued by a spectral horseman wrapped in sheets one night after leaving Jane's house. Sound familiar? The prankster's cackling laughter revealed his identity, and the prank had the desired effect on Merwin. He took the hint, proposed to Jane, and married her, avoiding a lifetime of similar pranks and teasing. By the way, the schoolmaster Jesse Merwin, if you haven't already surmised, was Irving's inspiration for Ichabod Crane. And then there's the headless horseman. According to the New York Historical Society, Irving may have been inspired by an actual Hessian soldier who was decapitated by a cannonball during the Battle of White Plains around Halloween 1776. General George Washinton's inexperienced army was in full retreat after suffering a crushing defeat at the Battle of Long Island. He ordered his troops to prepare a hasty defense near White Plains. There, on the eve of Halloween, American forces engaged a combined force of British and Hessian soldiers. Lieutenant Ephraim Fenno assumed command of a lone artillery battery on top of a hill overlooking White Plains. Fenno fired a single cannonball at advancing Hessian troops, decapitating one of them and effectively ending the assault. According to the book Once Upon a Time in the American Revolution, soldier Anthony Maxwell is said to have witnessed the unfortunate death firsthand and talked about it for years after. And in his 1798 memoir, Major General William Heath wrote, "A shot from the American cannon at this place, White Plains, took off the head of a Hessian artilleryman." Now, let's not forget that artillerymen used horses to pull their cannons across the countryside, and most artillery brigades had officers that rode on horseback. Could this be our horseman? Today, a small placard marks the spot where the lone Hessian lost his head, less than 8 miles from Sleepy Hollow. What's interesting is that the Van Tassels may have ties to the Hessian soldier. The Van Tassel farm was burnt down by Hessian and British soldiers. Elizabeth's baby Leah was nowhere to be found. One of the Hessians took Elizabeth to a shed where a soldier had baby Leah wrapped in a blanket. The Van Tassels were so grateful that when the headless soldier was found, they insisted on giving him a proper burial in case it was the soldier who helped them. Supposedly, the corpse of the beheaded Hessian was buried at the old Dutch church graveyard in Sleepy Hollow, and it was believed that the Hessian would arise at night in search of his head. Anyone who was ill-fated enough to come across his apparition, well, you know the story. Washington Irving didn't invent the idea of a headless horseman. Tales of headless riders can be traced to the Middle Ages, and it's almost certain he was influenced by those tales. Perhaps the Van Tassels really did bury the Hessian in the old Dutch church graveyard, and he rises from the grave every night to look for his head. I'm not of the mind to wait around to find out, but I can say that there indeed was a Hessian soldier, perhaps riding a horse, who had his head separated from his body, and for a brief moment was indeed the headless horseman. Thank
There
you
you
for
go,
watching,
folks.
I'll see you next time.
The
as we
true
explore
story
more
of the headless
curious
horseman.
history. Take care.
Take care, and remember, stay spooky this time of year.